Okay, we are live at 1 p.m. You are here with Shawn and Emily. Hey, everybody. All right. So as we get the afternoon started now, I know probably, a lot of people are going to be having lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have lunch already or no?
No, I had a lesson before this and one after
Okay.
this. So I will just be hungry forever.
I think I think your 2 o'clock should become lunch hour with Emily.
Mm-hmm. You can just
Where
hear me eating all the time.
yeah, where you have to guess the food by the sounds. I
Yes,
think that's a great
very
idea. Yeah.
fun for me, maybe less fun for the audience. But,
But the thing is in a way they could join along too because in the chat they could describe what they're eating and then they have to guess, or you have to
yeah.
guess what they're eating. See?
Okay.
Look at
So
that.
if you are watching us and you want to do that, you can tell us what you're eating, or you can
Yeah.
describe what you're eating if you prefer.
hmm
Have you eaten yet, Shawn?
Um, what's up?
Have you eaten yet? Have you had
No, I
lunch?
haven't. I was waiting to be inspired before I
Ah,
would go and have my lunch this fine
okay.
afternoon. Now, over by you in Milan, Emily, is the weather quite nice or is it cloudy?
It is beautiful today. Yeah. I stood on
Really?
my balcony for about an hour this morning
Yeah.
just to get that vitamin D.
You're just living on your balcony now, like a
I think
vagabond
so.
bum on the balcony.
I think everyone is living on their balcony now.
Yeah. Windows open, everything. It's
Yes.
crazy that you can't, like, to be honest with you, when I first saw the decree, it seemed like you could still do exercise outside. But
Mm,
then they closed the parks, and now it's like,
yeah.
wow, I didn't exercise before. Now I know for
Mm.
sure I'm not going to exercise anymore.
No. I mean, I live on the seventh floor, so I am walking down the stairs when I go to the shops now. That's my
Exactly. Yeah.
exercise.
That's great exercise. I run up and down my staircase all day long.
Mhm. Yeah.
Excellent. So everybody, welcome into the masterclass. Okay, I see that we have a couple people here now with us. Like I said, you are here with Shawn and Emily. We both are calling you guys from Milano Meravigli. Um, we want to remind you guys that every day you can find these webinars on YouTube, but also too, we really want to motivate you guys. We are going to have some activities and events this week. So if you want to participate, I believe, when is it, Em? On Thursday, the St.
Mhm.
Patrick's?
That's right. I think Thursday, 6 until 8 is the St. Patrick's Day.
Excellent. So you'll be with a couple other teachers and we'll be celebrating St. Patrick's Day together. Good afternoon, Marco, and good afternoon, Johnny.
Hi, I
Welcome
remember
into the
you
class.
both last week. Welcome.
Okay, excellent. So Emily's got you guys in on the lock. Today, I want to remind you guys too that if you aren't with us for Masterclass, you can also follow us through SOS. Okay, you guys might have seen it on your profiles. If you ever have a question with us, we're always connected, and you can simply write on the Facebook. You have to subscribe to SOS English. Okay, you can find it on your profile through My English School. And also, too, if you guys want to work on writing, what was it, Emily? The writing was with Danielle and
Angie, I think.
Angie. Yeah.
Yes. So they will have a look at any articles, any written answers you want to send to them. Is it a specific email address? I can't remember
I
the
think it's on
info.
Facebook, but I'm not sure as of right now. Um, They didn't, but we know that you can write to us in any means via Facebook, Instagram, Mayas Meravigli, okay? And we'll have teachers that can respond to you guys, okay? So in this time, it's important that we all can stay to get connected. And if you guys ever have any questions, don't hesitate to ask us, okay?
Absolutely.
Excellent. So today, what Em and I were going to bring to you is we're going to talk about inspiring people. And I know that both Marco, Johnny, and also Paula, welcome Paula. Okay, I
Mhm.
know that all of us are very inspiring people.
Of
Okay,
course.
of course. Em, when you think of inspiring people, who is a person that comes to mind?
um, I think, of course, people who change the world in lots of ways. You know, someone like maybe Einstein, someone like Da Vinci, who people who
Mhm.
really who are thinkers. I think I immediately go to thinkers rather than maybe activists, but also maybe someone like Greta Thunberg at the
Yeah.
moment. People like that. Oh, we have Martin Luther
Mhm.
King from Paula. Yeah, those are a really good example as well. What about you, Shawn? Do you have any inspiring people?
I definitely more I lean more towards for sure um thinkers. And
Mhm.
also, for example, I whenever I think of someone who's inspiring, you know, you can do it personally and talk about your parents, but you can also talk about,
Yeah.
you know, historic people.
Hmm.
Like Emily, like you said, I automatically think of Leonardo da Vinci, or I think of Martin Luther King. But
Hmm.
inspiring is something that, for example, I think today what's important to talk about is how to feel inspired, is how we can work together, you know, to really inspire others, because inspiration is something that is a very strong sensation, I think. um,
Yeah.
and some people kind of incorporate or encapsulate that definition of inspiration. But for example, a lot of people, we can also share with each other in order to inspire. It doesn't necessarily have to be a person. I think it's
Mhm.
how we communicate with each other. Um,
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's a great point that inspiration never really works in a vacuum. It's always about how you react to the world or how another person does, and then you see their reaction. So, yeah, it can become a real chain of people or chain of
exactly.
inspiration. I like that idea.
And it's really interesting that the chain idea, if we talk about today, for example, I
Mm.
mean, it's amazing. Never, I'm sure that it's not like Da Vinci or Picasso or anybody said that today we would be able to talk to each other via a connection, a digital connection, that we can talk to people from Rome, in
Mm.
America, in London. I mean, the idea of connectivity today, I think, is also something that helps us to connect and communicate much faster, so
Mm-hmm.
that we can feel more inspired. It's just like the movements with Greta. Okay, Greta Thunberg, I think, was so powerful because of the digital age.
Definitely, yes. Yeah, maybe so. Maybe there are more popular, inspiring people now because we hear about these global movements, these global figures, whereas in the past, then it takes some time for these people to really become famous or become such inspirations.
Yeah. Almost like if we think about momentum, you know,
Mhm.
the momentum today, we're moving so fast. And therefore, I think we have to be a little bit more, how can I say, a little bit more critical on the movements that can happen because we are so connected. Where
Mhm.
before, for example, the movement of Gandhi or the movement of Nelson Mandela, you know, these people, it took a lot of work, I think, to gain
Absolutely.
momentum.
Yeah. Yeah, and the same with art movements as well. I think Gianni just mentioned Van. See, this is the pronunciation changes for different people, but Van Gogh or Van Gogh, Van Gogh,
Yeah,
however you want to say it. I think again he really is part of this movement that was taking hold at a certain time. So he is maybe one element of a general worldwide inspiration, which is really nice to
exactly.
think about.
And we think about like the pieces in the puzzle at the same time. You know, if you think of a
Mhm.
Van Gogh or Picasso or even Steve Jobs, Steve Jobs is a small element to a big explosion of an idea. Like Picasso represents a period, but also Picasso represents an individual like Van Gogh. So it's
Mhm.
interesting how each period of time has people that define that time period.
Yes, absolutely. And you could easily go to someone else for those inspirations. You know, there are
Yeah,
many, many artists of that period who are very, very talented. You know, there's I think her name is Dora Mars, or the wife of Picasso also was a great artist.
yeah.
You can choose anybody, so it's very interesting to find the people who have really caught the imagination for generations
Mhm.
after.
But I think probably both you and I can both agree on this, that the most beautiful thing about researching in history, whenever we find someone we like, and this is a challenge for all of you guys today, whenever you feel inspired by somebody, try to find the connecting links. For example, I remember when I was younger and I was really influenced by surrealist art. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously I looked at Salvador Dali, but then I noticed that Salvador Dali was connected with Andre Breton, a poet,
Yes.
and it kept, the whole point is inspiration is something that continues to open doors.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, for example, for you, and for like the things that you're passionate about, whenever you really start to research, you begin to find a lot more, and you understand that this person, I understand why they're important, but they would not be important if they weren't connected with all of these other people.
Absolutely, yes. I think for me, I'm very, very interested in the early 20th century, about 100 years ago. And the reason is because everything is so connected. It is because you have the beginning of cinema, you have, as you said, surrealism going into art, into philosophy, into poetry. And it's just amazing how all of these things connect. And I
Yeah,
think for me, that's what inspiration is. It's this connection between different disciplines, different
yeah.
ways of expressing ideas.
And I don't want to make a generalization, but at the same time, to keep positive and motivated. In the 1920s, there was a lot of big changes that happened, and it seems like in every 100 years, every century, there is always like a big push, a big change in the first 20 years. And it's interesting that even now, the history of this idea of big change, the 1920s, the 1820s, the 1720s, you don't really think too much about 1720s, but you
No.
think about the beginning of a century, and you think this is the time where, think about, imagine people in 2091 looking back on 2020. And if they have that same sense of nostalgia and that same sense of love and appreciation for what we have for the 1920s.
Yeah, I think they will certainly be shocked by some of the decisions people have made in the last
Yeah,
10 years. But,
yeah,
often big ideas do interact with shocking ideas.
exactly. And it's interesting how today we're able to write history in such a different way than maybe 100 years ago.
Mm.
Okay, Marco brings up a nice point. It's strange that some artists were inspiring only for the following generations. Van Gogh's importance and legacy came only after his death. Exactly.
Hmm.
And that's what's interesting. And then Alessandro talks about the momentum of faith now. Oh, I love it. We're getting into some nice quotes this afternoon.
Yes.
Okay. I
Yeah, that's a
think
great
it's
point.
I think that's what's important is there's some nice vocabulary that we can talk about specifically with Van Gogh. Van Gogh, the whole point is, a lot of thinkers, they are what we say before their time.
Hmm.
Okay. And before their time, they kind of, it's just like how we think about Michelangelo or Da Vinci. These people were thinkers that were a little bit too advanced, we can say. Even if we think about Leopardi, Leopardi, during his time, it was a very positive environment, and he was the only skeptic in his writing. So people didn't accept him because he was more skeptical than thinking about, oh, we're living in such a happy and open society.
Yeah, I think that's a
So
really
today, guys, let's talk about some different inspiring people. We're going to look at some quotes. We're going to look at different ways to kind of feel inspired and also to think about what inspires us. Okay? Inspiration. Emily, can you read for me number one?
sure. So number one, we have, does everybody need inspiration in their lives?
Okay.
Um,
And
yeah,
so, for example, I want to first open up the question before we talk about yes or no. I want to ask everybody, where do you find inspiration? Each one of you personally, where do you find inspiration? And I'll start by asking for you, Em. Whenever you talked about the 1920s a little bit, but for example, what are some of your hobbies that you might do outside of school?
sure. So I watch a lot of films at the moment. I think the last few years I've really become interested in that development in the way people use that form to create empathy, that kind of emotion. Um, I also write sometimes, a lot of reading, a bit of writing. Again, that was a bit more a few years ago, but still try. And if I am writing, then sometimes I just ask people to give me ideas. I like
Yeah.
doing that. I like seeing what comes into people's heads when they don't think very much. I think sometimes that can lead you to the purest type of inspiration. You just think,
Yeah.
what's a word that comes into your head when you don't think?
Exactly. And sometimes, opening up for a time for silliness or play really
Yeah,
helps that
absolutely.
creative kind of bug.
Yeah,
So you would say that, for example, you've become quite a movie buff in the past couple
definitely.
years.
Yes, or I'm a
And
cinephile, you could say.
so are
Yeah.
you more of like a Charlie Chaplin kind of person, or are you more like other silent films?
Ah, silent films. Yes, I would go for comedy in silent films. I
Hmm.
I like I like Chaplin a lot, and similar filmmakers like Buster Keaton. I also like
Hmm.
very emotional as well as humorous, and also later films. But yeah, I think there's something very, very interesting about silent film because it's just not really possible anymore to have that
Yeah.
art form in the same way.
I think everyone should check out Buster Keaton films. They
Definitely.
are It's because, for example, we talk a lot of times about the magic of cinema,
Hmm.
and I think that those early moments were the real. It was like when we started to use photography. You know, at the beginning there was this pure form of this sense of really trying to create something, and you had to create all of the tools. Where
Hmm.
today we have all of the tools ready for us.
Hmm. Definitely, yeah. And if anyone does want to check out Buster Keaton, I really recommend one called Sherlock Junior, which I will write in the chat for you. And that's a
Sherlock
very,
Julia.
very early film he made about someone pretending to be a detective. And it's
Yeah,
very, very funny.
very good.
Okay.
So Johnny says that knowing different people and their habits can inspire me quite a lot. Very good. So you like to observe people. You like to see how people react and kind of act. Um, Now, for both of us, what are some other types of inspiration that we can think of? Because if we look at the photo, we obviously have an art gallery or something like that.
Hmm.
Paula says that I find inspiration in other ways of thinking and art in general, movies, photography, visual arts. So most
Yeah.
of our ideas of inspiration come from the line of creativity.
Hmm.
Do you
Yeah.
think there are other? Go ahead, Lisa
We
or Emily.
we do also have Alessandra's comment, which I think is quite interesting. So you have hello silence, my best friend, or also in the Simon and Garfunkel song, my old friend. You can have so
Yeah,
the idea of silence as inspiration. I think definitely if you just listen to nothing, if you just take a moment to just empty your mind, I think that's a really nice idea there, which is maybe in some
yeah.
ways the opposite of what we were talking about.
No, Em, you're exactly correct. Because if we think about silence, especially in the days that we live in today, we don't take much time to really sit back and
Hmm.
reflect.
Yeah, yeah. That reminds me of a poem that I read once, and it begins, "What is this life when full of care? We have no time to stand and stare," which I think is a nice sentiment. No time to
Yeah, it's a
just
beautiful.
just look at nothing.
Yeah. I mean, what's interesting about that is if you bring that into, for example, my journey as a visual artist of painting. At the
Mhm.
beginning of my journey, it was all about depicting something. It was all about creating something and giving you images. And what's interesting now, doing this for over 10 years, it's now to the point where I don't want to depict anything. I almost
Mm,
want to give the viewer nothing in order to fill in their own blanks.
interesting. So how do you represent that nothing? Do you still represent it through art?
Yeah, I mean, representing nothing can be, for example, you play a lot with the visible and invisible.
Hmm.
You play a lot with maybe, for example, a painting has many layers. And so whenever you go to an art gallery, everybody, when you go, yes, you see the image, but you also have to think about the different steps that the artist took to arrive at that finished thing that you see. and
Mm,
and I kind of play with those layers. I play with maybe color, and I play with brush stroke, and so it's really just a simple game of what is seen and what isn't seen.
mm, I like that. Yeah. I think in writing you also get a version of that where people play with blank space. They play with empty
Yeah.
spaces in the page. So you have whole pages of books that are black or white
Hmm.
and they have no text in them. And then when you have a sentence, it becomes quite shocking. You think, why is there a sentence here but nothing on the next page?
Yeah, it's just like John Cage, the famous 20th century
Yes,
composer, that had the,
absolutely.
what was it, 5 minutes of silence.
Yeah, amazing. Which
Yeah.
brings us back to Alessandra's comment again.
Yeah. So the challenge is today, guys, in our time, especially in these days, accept the silence, accept the beauty of nothing, and reflect on this is a time for us to grow and to feel inspired by,
Mhm.
because in a way, what's interesting is that the way that we're in right now is we are slowing down, but sometimes we often slow down in one thing to speed up another thing.
Mm, yeah. Okay. We have another nice comment from Gianni. Small unexpected details. Yeah. I
Mhm.
think again we talked about big ideas, but also small details. If
Exactly.
you notice something about someone, that's quite nice. Yeah, thank
Mhm.
you.
There's a beautiful quote that they say life happens in the small moments.
Hmm.
And I really I think I carry that with me everywhere.
Yeah, that's nice.
So now let's take a look at some different quotes that we have here. I'll read number one. So keep your eyes on the stars and your feet on the ground. Okay. How about for you, number two, M?
Number two, problems are not stop signs; they are guidelines.
Huh. Okay.
I haven't
Number
heard that before.
three, life begins at the end of your comfort zone.
And number 4, knowing is not enough, we must apply. Willing is not enough, we must do.
Very good. So guys, let's take a moment together and either describe each one. Make sure you label in the comment, either you're talking about 1, 2, 3, or 4, and give us the meaning, okay? And then tell us which one for you is the most inspiring.
Mm. Which one is your favorite, Shawn?
For me, I would say, let's see, I am a pretty big dreamer, but I'm also, I like to challenge things. So
Mm-hmm.
I would say that number 3 and number 1 are very important for me. Life
Mm-hmm.
begins at the end of your comfort zone.
Yes, it's a nice thought.
Mm-hmm. How about for you?
I think for me, I think I live my life through numbers 1 and 2, I think,
Mm-hmm.
particularly. And
Yeah.
I would like to live by number 3, but
Yeah.
I may be too fond of my comfort zone sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the idea of problems not being something to stop you. It's something that can help you move
Yeah.
forward, just like we were
Exactly.
talking about this time
It's
period.
changing our outlook.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, for example, what's interesting is for both you and I, and also probably for other people, whoever has lived around the world. When I was back in university, I kept this running quote in my mind that
Mm-hmm.
it's always run away from comfort zones. Okay, so if
Okay.
life is comfortable, change it. Uh,
Mm.
but at the same time, you want to be very careful with this quote
Yeah.
because what started to happen, especially coming to Italy and starting to move, what I noticed was it was one thing to change your life. It's
Mm.
another thing to just create chaos.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So one thing in life is most people always want change of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if we always search for change instead of letting life happen, we begin to create more problems than solutions for ourselves.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think a lot of people want change because they think it will make them happy.
Yeah.
And that often isn't true. Maybe you get the change you want, but it isn't a solution to all your existing problems. It isn't an
No.
answer, really.
And that's the thing, it's like it comes back to like the comment, the grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah.
Um, where there's I think I find a hard time understanding the difference between content and complacent.
Definitely, that's a nice distinction.
So we got some nice comments coming in for Marco and Johnny and also Bruno. Okay,
Mhm.
welcome, Bruno. We got all nice, really nice definitions for number 1. For Marco, we got reach for the stars, but always be realistic. Okay, so always kind of keep yourself planted, we say.
Mhm.
Johnny's got you have to be realistic and practical, but need to open your mind. Very good. So it's kind of a way to say, understand logical how things go, but always stay open for opportunity. And Bruno says you can learn from mistakes. Okay.
Mhm.
So learning from mistakes, it has a similarity. But I think learn from your mistakes might be a little bit more for 2. What do you think, Am?
Yeah, I agree. It depends on what kind of problem, because a problem can be something up ahead, or it could be a mistake that you make. I think both of those can work as guidelines, as advice. I
Mm-hmm.
think Bruno actually meant that for number 2 as well, is
Yeah.
learn from mistakes, which is great.
See,
Thank
look at that. And I'm already learning from that mistake, Bruno. We did a great job. All right, what a good guideline. Uh,
you. Absolutely. Okay.
so let's continue. Okay, so we already talked about a couple different people, but now what I'd like everyone to do is what Emily and I will do is we're going to read a couple things to you, and we want you guys to just listen in, okay? So let's see here.
Yeah, so we just have a different PDF of some inspirational figures, and you can think about how inspirational you think they are, what is interesting about them.
So maybe what we can do so that we know that you guys are following along is you can take out their names, like we have Nick, Nando, okay? And as we read these, give us kind of a little summary, okay? Maybe what are they inspiring for? What are important features of these people, okay? So, Em, do you want to start with Nick Volchik?
Yes, could you zoom in slightly, if possible? I can read it,
Zoom in.
but okay. So we have Nick Volchik, is that how you say it? So he is a man with no limbs who teaches people how to get up. Okay. So he says, "Why I'm happy. Why aren't you?" asks Nick Volchik, an Australian man born with the rare tetra amelia syndrome. Despite being limbless, missing both arms at shoulder level, and having only one small foot with two toes protruding from his left thigh, he is doing surf, he's swimming, playing golf and soccer. Nick graduated from college at the age of 21 with a double major in accounting and financial planning, and became a motivational speaker with a focus on life with a disability, hope, and finding meaning in life. Having addressed over 3 million people in over 44 countries on 5 continents, he also spreads his message of hope on his book, Life Without Limits Inspiration for a Ridiculously Good Life, published in 2010.
So I have to tell you guys, there's a little I met him
Wow.
when I was in high school. The last year in high school, he came and spoke, and he gave one of the most inspirational messages I think I've ever heard in my life.
Really? What did he say?
Yeah. He taught, well, the funniest part is it goes perfectly with his book. Because I graduated the year before he published the book, and I think he was building up a lot of experiences and examples for the book. But he comes into the room, okay, and now everyone's seated, and he comes in onto stage, and the first thing he does is he falls off the stage.
Wow.
And it was one of those things where, and it's interesting to now see this slide and remember this guy, because this guy was a person that was so full of energy, love, and happiness. And I think that was what was so inspiring about him.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, Alessandra says one's limits or one's first resources as a summary for what Nick says, which I think is a really nice way to put it. Thank you, Alessandra.
Yeah. Very good. So we'll continue with Nando Parado, survived airplane crash and 72 days in the Andes. Okay. 72 days of ordeal Nando Parado and other survivors of a plane crash in the Andes had to endure before being rescued. Flying over the mountains on a Friday the 13th, the young men and their families who boarded the charter plane joked about the unlucky day when the plane's wing hit the slope of the mountain and crashed. On impact, 13 passengers were instantly dead, while 32 others were badly wounded. Hoping to be rescued, the survivors waited in the freezing -37 degrees Celsius temperature, melting snow for drinks, and sleeping side by side to keep themselves warm. Food was so scarce, everyone had to pool whatever food they can find for a rational pool. 9 days after the crash, due to the dire desperation and hunger, the survivors called for an important meeting. One member proposed that they eat the dead. The 2 hour meeting ended with a conclusion. If any of them the rest had the permission to use the corpse as food. After 2 weeks, their hope of being found dashed when they found out via their radio transistor that the rescue effort was called off. On the 60th day after the crash, Nando Parado and two other friends decided to walk through the icy wilderness for help. By the time they left, Nando Parado said the crash site was an awful place, soaked in urine, smelling of death, littered with ragged bits of human bone and gristle. Wearing 3 pairs of jeans and 3 sweaters over a polo shirt, he and his friends trekked the mountains with human flesh as their ration. Knowing that they must search for rescue, the team endured frozen snow, exhaustion, and starvation, walking and climbing for 10 days before finding their way to the bottom of the mountain. The team was finally helped by the Chilean farmer who called the police for help.
Okay. You survived the essay there.
Yeah, Parado, I'm not done. Parado then guided the rescue
What?
team via helicopter to the crash site. It's going, Em. We're going. On the 22nd December 1972, after 72 brutal days, the world found out that there were 16 survivors who cheated death in the mountains of the Andes. 8 of the initial survivors died when an avalanche cascaded down on them as they slept in the fuselage. During the ordeal, Nando Parado lost 40 kilos of his weight. He lost half his family in the crash, and he is now a motivational speaker. His book, Miracle in the Andes, was published in 2007. Wow.
What a journey for him and for us today. Amazing.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
To be honest with you guys, I got to ask all of you, would you have survived that? Because I don't think I would have.
No, I wouldn't have. No.
No.
So I think maybe there might be one or two phrases there we should go over a little. Maybe so cheated death, for example.
For
So
example,
to cheat death.
yeah.
Yeah, to cheat death when you escape death unexpectedly. Yeah, it's like death expects you, death is waiting for you, but then something changes and you are lucky, you can escape it.
And what about ordeal? Ordeal's a good word.
It is. So maybe a really traumatic experience, a really difficult experience.
And the ordeal is usually always some kind of negative situation. So like, how'd the ordeal go? It always has a negative connotation.
Absolutely. And if you did hear any other words that you
what
are not
about
sure
dire?
Dire is another good word. It's a good word when you want to be dramatic about something. So again, dire, very, very negative. Similar to terrible, just a general, very negative word.
Now, do you guys ever use the expression dire straits?
Yes.
Okay. And so, for example, for our listeners, dire straits, how could we use it?
So maybe if you have no money and you are almost out of food, for example, and you could say you're in dire straits. So your circumstances are really terrible and they are becoming quite urgent.
Excellent. Let's see. So,
and yes, as Alessandra says, the name of a band also.
It's a great name of the band. Which one you want to read, Em? You want to read Jessica Cox or Shawn Swarner?
I will read Jessica Cox because it's quite small on my screen. So I think the short one is easier for my eyesight. Okay, so Jessica Cox. Ah, no, it happens. Jessica Cox suffered a rare birth defect and was born without any arms. None of the, I can't read it, prenatal tests her mother took showed there was anything wrong with her. And yet she was born with this rare congenital disease, but also with a great spirit. The psychology graduate can write, type, drive a car, brush her hair, and talk on her phone simply using her feet. Ms. Cox from Tucson, Arizona, USA, is also a former dancer and double black belt in Taekwondo. She has no restrictions driving license. She flies planes and she can type 25 words a minute. The plane she flies is called an Ercoupe, and it is one of the few airplanes to be made and certified without pedals. Without rudder pedals, Jessica is free to use her feet as hands. She took 3 years instead of the usual 6 months to complete her lightweight aircraft license, had 3 flying instructors, and practiced 89 hours of flying, becoming the first pilot with no arms.
Wow.
Wow, what a story.
So, in this sense, if we could sum up Jessica Cox's story in one word, what word would it be, guys? Think about it. One word to hear that story. And it's kind of the same word kind of comes to me also for parado. Is this sense of never giving up. And what's a
Mm,
synonym to never give up? What adjective do you need?
you you could maybe use a word like persistent. There are
Boom,
several
baby.
words.
Emily, you read my mind.
And so persistent is probably the only one I know that is neutral or even positive, because a lot of the synonyms are more negative. So a
Yeah.
synonym, something like stubborn, maybe that's normally more negative. If you
I would
should
say
give something up but don't.
you can use persistence, resilience.
Hmm.
There's a word I'm thinking of. Tenacious.
Hmm. I like that word.
That's for me, Invictus. Whoa. So
Oh,
Paula, perseverance. Okay, very good. So persevere is the verb, perseverance is the adjective or the noun.
a noun.
The noun.
I don't think there is an adjective
No.
that I know of. Persevering, maybe.
And Alessandra, is that the movie with Brad Pitt? Invictus? Because it wasn't it like Will Smith and Brad Pitt, the Nelson Mandela? No, that's
Yes,
it's
I
not
think
Brad Pitt,
so.
it's Matt
It's
Damon.
oh yeah, they're the
Yeah.
same person.
There you go. So whenever we inspire each other, for example, today leaving this class, what are some things, what are some traits that we can portray, that we can have to inspire others? Okay? What do you guys think? What I'd like to know now is how can you guys inspire other people outside of, well, I mean, you can't go outside of your home,
Mm,
but
yeah,
outside of
really
this class,
big
how can we
question.
continue?
Ah, Invictus is a poem as well as a movie. It's a poem by
Ah,
Henley. I didn't know that.
thank you, Alessandra.
Mm,
Alessandra, can you give us a verse of Invictus by Henley? I would like to read it.
yeah. So yeah, so keep those ideas, those traits coming to us. What do you think are traits that we need at the moment? How can we inspire each other? I think the idea
I
of
think how we can
resilience is
inspire
very
each other
useful.
now.
Mm,
Yeah, I think how we can inspire each other now is just to stay positive. Is just to continue to try to find the light, to try
hmm
to stay optimistic, to use this time as a way to reflect, and this time as a way to be a little bit more empathetic towards
hmm
other people and patient.
Yeah, I think a lot of those adjectives you mentioned are useful qualities at the moment. The idea of
Yeah.
patience, maybe.
I think patience. I mean, they say the quote, "Patience is a virtue."
Mm,
Oh,
yes.
out of the night that covers me. Oh, I
Ah,
like this.
I
This
like
is a
that. I think
nice
I have
poem.
heard that before. Yeah, it's nice. Although that could also be a monster, couldn't it? Out of the night that covers me, something protective. Yeah, and Johnny trying to be positive as much as possible. Yeah,
Yeah.
the idea of
Trust each other is
calmness,
a big.
Carla.
Yeah.
Mm, yeah, I think trust is very necessary at the moment.
Because the whole point of today, I think in general, we're being taught something right now. There's something very big happening that is affecting everybody in the world. And this is a
Mm,
time where we have to remember that we are human, that we are not immortal,
hmm
and we have to be a little bit more aware of the people closest to us.
hmm
There's a big contrast. We live in a global society, yet we don't necessarily think about the person next to me.
mm,
And I think
yes.
now we're being asked to be a little bit more patient with the people that affect me next to me. Our neighbors, the people at the grocery store, all
hmm
that jazz. So, Em, is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think most of those ideas I agree with, and I have the same thoughts. Maybe
Mhm.
also the idea of being open minded to think about what
Yeah,
can I do now, what can I think about now, even if there is something that has been at the back of your mind for a while that you've been thinking about. Maybe now is the time to express it. Now is the time to talk about things, to have conversations, to interact with people. I think if that's a lesson we can learn from this moment, it's quite a good one to learn.
no, and that's the thing. It's continuing to stay humble as well.
Hmm.
I think a lot of inspiring people, the biggest thing that we can learn from them is their humility.
Yes,
Very good. So, guys, Emily, where are you from? You're from England, but where specifically?
I am. The city is called Wolverhampton in the middle of England. So,
Wolverhampton. How do you spell
yes.
Wolverhampton?
It's a place where wolves are not from, but there are no wolves that I know of in the area. But it's near Birmingham. You might know
Yeah.
Birmingham.
It's where wolves live and the rich people go for vacation. The Hamptons.
No, in fact, it's named after the founder, who was Lady Wolfruna, and then it somehow became like Wolfruna Town became Wolverhampton somehow. That's
Yeah.
the English place names and how they were how they've changed is a very interesting topic, but for another
Yeah.
day probably.
Yeah, for another time, another day. But remember, guys, if you have any questions as of right now, please leave them in the comments. We got a couple. We got a minute or two left. We just want to remind you guys all that it's great to have you guys here with us. It's great to talk with you guys and communicate at this level. Remember to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and all of our activities that we talked to you guys about at the beginning of class.
Yeah, and in general, thank you again for all your comments. We've had some really nice ideas today, so we love to hear from you.
Excellent. So from Emily and I, you guys have a lovely day.
Have a good day, guys.
Bye, guys.
See you next time.